this. And drum roll, please. Bingo. All right. Sir,
Hey,
how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, by all means. Oh my God, I got a message here. Oh, Monsieur, all the way from Spain. Hello. I'm just gonna send a message here. Um, dude, the pleasure's mine. The pleasure's absolutely all mine. I'm glad that first of all you can make it. So I do want to thank you for your time today, and especially that rambling intro that I just had. So, but like I mentioned, I did want to cover some items. I'm going to ask you to, gently kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Amrik, I'm based here in Montreal. I work as a software and web performance engineer at Yottaa right now. I started working with SpeedSense, which got acquired by Yottaa. So now I work as a full-time person in performance where I get to build the tools and also do consulting for clients as a web performance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now you're saying just for the people out there who to sort of like wrap their head around it, um, you are currently at Yoda, and for those who don't know, explain to them who Yoda and what Yoda does.
Yeah, so Yottaa is a e-commerce optimization platform where we collect a lot of data from major e-commerce brands and also do a lot of optimization client side, where it's a full suite performance and conversion data and performance data all tied together optimization tool.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's basically for e-commerce optimization.
Okay. And now you'd mentioned prior to that you were over at SpeedSense, and SpeedSense is a company out of Vancouver, Canada. And if you want to let people know what SpeedSense is.
Yeah, so at Specense, we consulted with a lot of e-commerce brand where we provide performance insights and help them uh, improve their site speed. So with a lot of e-commerce brand, we would come in and share insights or find issues on the site where the performance can be improved, and then we provide insights and actionable steps to how to improve the performance directly with the team of that client.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yes, and for those, you may who follow the stream and who may have been watching it for a while, the founder and CEO of SpeedSense, Sean, what's Sean's last name? O'Neill? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean was actually one of my guests. I think it was episode 654, somewhere on there. Um, I'll be able to post it at some point. But yeah, great story there. Now, you were at SpeedSense. What were you doing prior to that?
Yeah, so I had a job as a developer previously before SpeedSense, and I was tasked to improve code web vitals at my job, and I was able to do it, and I found it really interesting, like how uh, you can improve performance by doing certain things, and there's this code web vitals number. So I started sharing my insights, or I started making content on LinkedIn, and then Sean saw my content and he really liked it, and then that's how we connected and started working together at SpeedSense.
Amazing. That's awesome. Now, whether or not you can or cannot share, I'm not sure, but the job that you had, or where you were asked and tasked to improve the core vitals, what was it, or what kind of industry was it?
Yeah, so it was so we had a online educational website, so where users can sign in and take courses in
Mhm.
human physiology. So performance was a big pillar for us because we had a lot of marketing and blog posts, articles, and a lot of media that lives on the side. And we wanted to make it a good experience for students to take courses anywhere, especially from their mobile. So
Mhm.
performance was a big thing for us. And when we saw Google penalizing us for poor performance because our core vitals numbers was not that great, then I was tasked to look into that issue and find any ways we could improve performance. And we were able to find the issues and address them, and then really prioritize performance and make sure that our core vitals are moving in the right direction, and we provide a good experience for all the students.
Wow. So this was an educational platform that became fairly media rich, and they realized that their performance was starting to suffer, if not degrade. And from what it sounds like, you had a lot of students who were logging on via mobile. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, because it's a platform where you can log in. It's a web app, so you can log in into any device, mobile or tablet or desktop. And as the students, it's a global platform, so you can sign up from anywhere in the world. So we wanted to make sure that everyone across the world gets a good experience, and also it's very easy for them to just study and take courses, let's say on commute or anywhere they are. So it really became important for us to provide that to students.
Wow. I'm definitely going to have to come back to that because I think there's a lesson to be learned there for sure. Now, before we get into, like I said, we dive into the details, I'd like to also, sort of go through this one question that I ask all my guests. Um, and the question is, what was your earliest memory of, looking after performance and or being interested in performance? And what led you to this sort of path?
So my earliest encounter with performance is actually interesting. So I think I was 14 or 15 years old, and we just have moved into a new house, and we did not have Wi-Fi in that house. So I would try to steal my neighbor's Wi-Fi, which will be accessible at a certain window of time during the day, and download a bunch of web pages or sites that I would read or consume later on my mobile device. And at that moment, I really realized like how important it is for things to load fast, and because I wanted to use this Wi-Fi, which didn't really have good speed because of the distance, and I would try to gather as much as I could in terms of bandwidth and download a lot of web pages that I can consume during the night and then do the whole thing again tomorrow. So speed became a really important factor for me because it was like if I cannot download a web page or website, it's not fast, then I'm not going to be able to read it later on my device.
Amazing. So your experience was that even on Wi-Fi and on mobile, you're trying to download content as quickly as possible, and b did you feel or see or even understand at like 14 and 15, whether or not like a particular site was slower than the other?
Yeah, so I had actually started teaching myself programming right around that time. So I was able to understand a little bit like how websites function, or which websites are fast, which are slow ones, where do I need to spend more time, or which one load really quickly. And I would focus on the sites that would load quickly. And yes, I was able to identify where to look and where not to look, or which ones load fast or load slow.
Wow. So basically, you really understood, fairly early, what was involved, what were the components of a fairly fast site, and what was not, necessarily a good user experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't say technically I was able to understand those things, but I was able to look at a site and like, hey, yeah, this is a good site that will work with the slow internet, and I should spend more time here instead of the other site, which is you to take a lot more data or internet speed.
Wow, that's awesome. And I get back to Jakob Gross, and he had not the exact same experience, but something similar. Because he talked about being on mobile, and he felt like this bizarre disadvantage versus his friends who had like better devices and probably better access in general, and which is why I think during his presentation or his our conversation, anyhow, he felt that web performance was uh, sort of like an affront or an attack on access, and not being able to have the same sort of like, devices should not be, as he sees it, a hurdle to accessing content, but no, that's a pretty interesting story. And Sean O'Neill here. I can't believe I called you Sean O'Neill, but Sean here says reminiscent of 3G Fridays, which is absolutely true. For those out there who may or may not have heard this, but there are some companies out there that started to get their engineers to work in very constrained conditions. And I think it was, I have to be honest, I could get this wrong, but I think it was New York Times. And Sean, maybe you remember this. New York Times, I think, had like 2G Tuesdays or something like that, where engineers were sort of like forced to operate in very, very throttled conditions, so they understood what was going on, and how to have a site that was loading as fast as possible. But that's an awesome story. I love that. And again, I ask this because I think engineers have different touch points, different ways that they found themselves caring about, web performance and why it mattered. And these experiences sort of charted their path, and I could go through a bunch of them. Actually, I should put these snippets together and create like a longer one, because they've all been very interesting, coming from different backgrounds. Some were academic, some were very like rum like, real user experience, like yourself, pardon me, and Jakob, and other people out there. So, but no, thank you for sharing that. So now, let's fast forward. You were at this education platform, and you start to share some content online because your team lead or whatever came to you and said, "Hey, our core vitals are not amazing. I'm going to put you in charge in improving them." And, I want to stop right there and ask you, what did you see? What did you do to improve that platform's core vitals? Like, what was the main issue as you saw it?
Yeah, so the biggest issue was we were going through a re-platform. We were moving towards using latest technologies like Next.js and React. And there was a bug in our code base where we thought the server-side rendering was working, but in fact it was not, because there was a conditional check where if the user ID is null, then don't generate these pages during build times. So because there is the user during the build time, when we would deploy, it would always be null and there would be no pre-generated or pre-rendered content for the web pages. And so everything would end up generating on the client side, and we were not able to get all the gains in terms of rendering because nothing was generated on the server. So I was able to find that bug and able to fix a really quick fix for that bug, because it was just one conditional check that was causing it. And once we fixed that, our code files went from red to like yellow, and that was a good instant feedback. Like, hey, if we actually do some actionable steps and target these things, then we will be able to improve our numbers and see a instant reward for it from Google. It's not instant, it takes 28 days, but still we would be able to see something in dashboard where, hey, your numbers are improving. And then I just like read a lot of resources, did a lot of research, and looked up like how to actually do the things the right way, like what type of images you should be loading, how much uh, media content, like how to load media content in terms of videos, the playback, and how to load the right elements on the page. So there was a whole plan like, hey, we need to improve these specific page templates, and these are the actionable items that we can take to improve these specific templates. And we would get through the list, then we were able to see a lot of improvements in our code files. And then it became a culture of we would make sure that we never introduce any bugs or anything that will degrade performance, because whenever that happened, we would get penalized from Google, and we would see that in our search console where the numbers would go to red and the performance would not be as great. So then it became a culture of, hey, we need to make sure that everything is as performant as possible. And if we're making a new feature, then performance or speed is a big aspect of shipping that feature.
Amazing. Now, I have a couple questions for you. You'd mentioned that it was, first of all, it sounds like your org at the time was using Next.js.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now, you'd mentioned that this was a bug. This was a bug. Is this something that you filed with Next.js saying, hey, this is what's going on? Uh, I mean, again, mentioning that it was a bug, cool. Was it something that was more or less poorly implemented from your org's side?
Yeah, it wasn't a bug in Next.js. It was just a bug in our code base where things were not working as expected.
Okay. Now, something else that you mentioned that I'm sure someone like Tammy Everett would be delighted to talk about and hear more. You talked about the idea of the culture had to change, and it clearly did change. What was that sort of conversation like?
So that my boss at that time was really so he was not a technical person, but he spent a lot of time on the website, and he would spend a lot of time seeing the numbers in the search console or the speed numbers or SEO and all that conversion data. And to him, it was clear that when we had good speed, we would have better SEO performance or better conversions. And not just that, when he would use the website, or people who would use the website, they would feel like, hey, this loads really fast and this is really good experience. So the experience improved across the site, and that was very noticeable for people who are not just technical but actual users and um, people at the company. And everyone wanted to make sure that we offer that experience to everyone and the users across the board. So because it was obvious to the people or like my boss, then we wanted to make sure that that threshold is always met. Like we never go below that threshold, or like we never suffer through a bad user experience, because we see that when we have good performance, all these other metrics also start going towards the right direction.
Amazing. No, that's amazing to hear from a non-technical lead who took the time to really kind of correlate what was going on in terms of just like user experience, speed, and some of the sort of like traffic numbers. Um, Something else you mentioned that something else I want to ask is, so were you the lone person tasked to look after this performance malaise?
No, there was another coworker with me.
Mhm.
His name is
Uh,
Amit, and him and I both together would brainstorm ideas or look at ways or just think about like how we can improve speed here or how we can improve speed in this feature in this area of the site. So it's
mhm.
teamwork.
Was there some kind of post-mortem, this is what happened, this is where we started, this is where we got to, and now we see like, the results we've been after?
Yeah. So at our team, we really we had KPIs. So KPIs was at the core of our org. So every week we would look at our numbers, like our RUM dashboard or our Google Search Console for Google Vitals, and we would see like, has this been improved, or what are the problems that we have to address or fix. And then we would like create tasks or create tickets for those issues, like, hey, these are the specific areas where problem is in terms of performance, and this is where we need to investigate or improve. And then every week we would see like, hey, has the numbers improved? And then we would look at our RUM dashboard or look at Google Search Console. And if it has, then it has because we've done the work for that number to improve. Or if it hasn't, then we would just go back like, hey, what needs to be done? And is there a task for it? And then we would prioritize it and just connect with the whole team every week.
Wow. So this was then sort of like a very noticeable shift, because you mentioned the culture had to change. You saw, and I'm not sure how long this lasted in terms of like from the day you started to investigate and make improvements to say like a few months later. But in your eyes, there were some definite changes in terms of how apps were now deployed.
Yeah. So before we had poor performance. So once we fixed those bugs and addressed the immediate issues, and then the performance improved, we were starting to get green and core battles. then we also saw this major improvement across everywhere, like in terms of user experience, the search console numbers, and the performance and SEO conversion rates. So when it was clear to everyone across the company that, hey, good speed means better numbers in terms of all those things that matter to the company, then it was like, then we need, it was a, it became sort of like an automatic task, or a recurring task, like, hey, we need to make sure that performance is never degraded, because if performance is bad, then everything else is also bad. But if performance is good, then then everything else has a good base, and then we can talk about individually addressing, like, let's say SEO, if we have a good performance. So
Hmm.
performance was the foundation that needed to be good for everything
Yeah.
else to stand up.
Right, right. So the performance had to be, literally, like you said, good at the base layer, so that you started from a place that was just like at the very least acceptable, and then you sort of
Yeah.
chip your way up to that bright green that everyone likes to see. I think this amazing because a lot of times we tend to think of performance and the importance of performance at the e-commerce level, potentially as well publishing, but it goes to show that an educational platform where you have a need for performance, and I have my own story about that. I sort of experienced something similar, but it goes to show that it's not just e-commerce, it's not just publishers. It's it can be an education platform, and so many others around that. Something you had mentioned that caught my ear was the fact that you had a user base that was apparently significantly, if not much more mobile than not. And you also mentioned the fact that the platform was set to be or meant to be used by registrants across the world. So, did you keep track of that data? I.e., did you have, or what was the split, if you can remember, of the mobile versus desktop? And also, in terms of your user base, how scattered across the world were they?
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, it was more like 60% were mobile and 40% were desktop. So it was
Mhm.
more mobile than desktop. In terms of the traffic split, I think, so it was mostly US, like most of our traffic was from North America, but we also had a lot of traffic from other countries like Asia
Mhm.
or Middle East or Europe. Majority of the traffic was from North America, but we didn't want to deprioritize other people from other regions of the world.
Mhm. Now, were you seeing, saying that America and Asia, were using your platform, obviously, uh, with the advent of CDNs, that could be more or less solved in terms of just proximity. But, were you seeing users from like remote locations?
I think yes, that is true. I remember once I looked up and there were people from like very north. Yeah, there's like people from like Australia or New Zealand, which is very far from where we were,
Mhm.
and the Middle East or Egypt. So there
Mhm.
were, it was all across the board.
Right, right, right. And, and again, I mentioned the idea of CDNs can sort of like short that distance, but there's some areas of the world who still classically have challenging internet and performance, and Australia has been one of them. You know, I'd say traditionally, I don't want to say it's still a problem, but over time, when things felt solved in other parts of the world, I remember hearing from people in Australia who are like, "Yeah, it's not the greatest here, but they manage." I was actually reading something about that more recently, uh, but no, that's like an amazing. It's almost like this fantastic apprenticeship into web performance because you have a mostly mobile user base. You also have a user that again is scattered user base that is scattered across the globe, which is again very important to remember. Shout outs to someone like Bruce Lawson, who years ago, this engineer who's over at Vivaldi now, who talked about you don't know where your users are coming from. You might have a platform that is set up to be used by a North American audience, and somehow someone from overseas, like well beyond what you figured your reach might be, is finding their way onto your platform, and then they'll send you a little note saying, hey, we can't access your site because X, Y, and Z is happening, or we have bad internet here, we can't load these images, or whatever it might be. So no, that's awesome. Now let's sort of like make our way chronologically to working over at Speed Sense. And I would imagine Speed Sense and Yoda kind of like worked roughly hand in hand in terms of like the kind of clients that you looked after. And I'm just basing this on my personal feelings, so I could be completely wrong. But since working at Speed Sense and sort of like making your way to working at Yoda, have they been mostly on the e-commerce side? Because you'd mentioned that Speed Sense definitely lean towards e-commerce, and Yoda specifically does. Has that been the case to this day?
Yeah, that has been the case where a lot of, I think all the clients we have right now, at least that the ones that I work with are
Mhm.
in e-commerce.
Okay. And when it comes to working with people and platforms that are specifically e-commerce, like what kind of, typical issues do you see at a average e-commerce platform?
There's a lot of issues. I think the first thing is to think about caching. Like
Mm,
a lot of sites inject user data into the base templates, and that becomes a problem where you're not able to cache your pages at the edge. So you
mm,
have to go to the server to make calls to ensure that the right HTML is loading for the right user. That's a big problem. And then there's problems with, let's say, a lot of brands run A/B testing. They use a lot of different approaches, a lot of A/B tests that run, or people, a lot of e-commerce sites using third parties, a lot of third parties that degrade performance on client side. And then
mm.
all about choosing the right format for the content, like images, videos, and there's INP issues like how do you load or how do you handle clicks, and yeah, there's a lot of things that are there.
Mm. So let's sort of like, circle back for a hot second. You had mentioned that a lot of people do, you said A/B testing. I find in my sort of travels, people are just looking for solutions. They're like, oh my God, I'm going to use this now. I'm going to use that now. I'm going to use this third, party library, whatnot. Do you find that some of the clients that you're working with, they know what they want, but they actually don't know how to use the actual tool itself?
I think that's true when a lot of brands or clients need a solution for a specific problem on their site, and they would go and find a solution that's convenient for them or is easy to implement, or they're just not educated enough in terms of what the performance impact would be of this specific solution. So yeah, I think it comes to knowing the performance cost of a specific solution, making sure that whatever's convenient for you might not be most convenient for your users.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now you also mentioned that you saw a lot of IMP issues. Now, is that the vital that you have seen come up the most in terms of client challenges?
It is a vital that is hard to diagnose or find on sites, and also hard to address sometimes. And it is not, I wouldn't say there's a trend or like there's one specific set of problems. It's very unique to individual sites and clients, because it's like when you click somewhere, what is happening on that site. So, and that code is different depending upon the site or the client. So some sites might be doing some third party processing or like data analytics, or a lot of third parties inject your handlers. Like when you click on a site, they would inject it and read a lot of analytics data and send that somewhere. So sometimes that becomes a problem, or sometimes it's just like first party code, which is not written the right way. Let's say you're using some old JavaScript API that is used causing recalculation of styles, but there's a better API available that does not cause that. And there's a lot of nuances in terms of first party code that you're writing and what works and what doesn't.
And when you're having these conversations or you making these discoveries, who are you speaking with? Are you speaking with a technical lead, and or are you speaking with, I don't know, like a smaller, org, and you're sort of forced to speak with someone who may not have that sort of like technical acumen?
So whenever we would talk, or whenever I would present these issues, my main target is to talk with developers, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of other people from other experience, other roles in the calls. So it is really about making sure everyone understands the issue. But when it comes to actual solutions and technicality, that is something that only developers might be able to understand.
Mhm.
So it's about both, where you first show the issue so that everyone understands what the issue is, and then you talk about solution, which only developers might be able to understand.
Yes,
I think
clearly.
both are important,
Uh,
and I do both.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm just, in my head, I'm wondering if it's, you speaking with the lead and lead having to go down to the developer, or, everyone being on the call. Now, what is, working at Yoda right now, and maybe this was the case at SpeedSense, but what is your typical sort of like workflow when it comes to being tasked with work to work with, organization X, or we won't say X, organization A? It's like, hey, I'm Rick, here's what's going on. And I guess what a meeting is set up, and what happens at that point?
So first, we have to look at the data. I think data has a lot of the data gives you a lot of direction in terms of
Mhm.
where to look. So, and internally, we have tools where we're able to look at the performance data of a site across the board, and we can identify what page types or what templates or what areas to explore when it comes to performance issues. Let's say someone might have a really fast blog, but they might have a really slow product detail page. And this is something we've been able to identify because of the data and dashboards we have internally and also
Mhm.
available to our clients. And once we have identified where to look, then it becomes a process of going into those page templates and finding the issues as the performance expert, like spending a lot of time in terms of tools, digging data, or like using Chrome Dev tools, find the issues and find issues that would actually help fix the problems that exist on that page or on that page type for core vitals. And then it becomes a process of collecting those issues, making sure we only present the issues that actually matter to the client and that are actually workable and are the most important or would have the most impact. And then it's about how to present those issues to clients.
Mhm. And you've just mentioned core vitals, and again, I bring back this sort of conversation that I've had, saying that this has been a bit of a tipping point at the very least, but I'd even say the core vitals have been an inflection point as well, in that this is where people really start to tune in. Now, when you start to have some of these client calls, um, are clients, are these orgs bringing up the idea of improving their core vitals, like in early in their conversation?
I would say yes, because uh, people or clients that come to us know that they have a problem with performance, but might not necessarily know how to fix those problems or where to even look for right data when it comes to performance. But Cora Vitals has become this easy anchor to aim at because it is provided by Google. It's easily available in your search console or any tool that you use. So usually the conversation starts or revolves around core web vitals. But when you have addressed core web vitals, then there's a layer deeper, or I wouldn't say it's a deeper layer. It's just there's looking at the run data and making sure that also is on par with all the other metrics or all the other data that you're looking at. But I think core web vitals is where the conversation starts.
And now you just mentioned, the magic word, which is rum, and this has been, uh, it's not a challenge, I don't think, but it certainly has taken some, I don't say orgs by surprise, but someone who may not be technically, inclined, having to explain rum data versus what they've seen in some other places or whatnot. How's that conversation been? When you mentioned the fact that the rum data is showing us or showing them or showing you ultimately, you know, X, Y, and Z. Like, do they understand that level of sort of like conversation in terms of synthetic field, rum data, not.
Yeah, I think it's all about educating the clients or the org that is looking at the data, and then that also falls on us to educate them. Like, hey, core virus is this field data is coming from Chrome or the Chrome Live users, right? People who use your site in Chrome, and we have RUM across every browser, across every device, and all this data we collect. And then there's synthetic tests that we run on your sites with our own, let's say, a Lighthouse report.
Mhm,
So it is about being transparent where that data is coming from and educating them what this data means and how it's collected. I think that's important to show, and also show them like what's the constraint that all these data points are collected from. Like, your site might be really slow in Safari, and you might not have the RUM coronavirus data for that in Search Console, but the RUM data that you collect across all browsers might show a different story
mhm.
than the field data that you'll see in your Search Console for Google Chrome.
Yes, 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 yes. And again, I ask because uh, it can feel like a bit of a fire hose sometimes when all this data is just being processed and presented as well, and they have to sort of like understand. It's like, okay, what's synthetic, what's rum, where's this coming from, what's this all about? Oh, okay, I get it now. Or maybe they don't. So I always wondered what that conversation would be like, because that could take a minute as well. Something else that I want to ask, and simply because you had mentioned that early on, the sort of like educational platform that you work with was on Next.js. Uh, in your travels so far, have you seen, has there been a particular framework or a particular platform that you've seen more often than not come to your desk?
Uh, it it has been a mix of different platforms. Sometimes it's Next, sometimes it's a single page application with just React. Sometimes it's just jQuery HTML. I would say there's a lot of brands that use jQuery,
Mhm.
and that has been that has come up a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, I think I wouldn't say there's one more like one technology dominates than another. I think it's been a fairly good mix of everyone uses different tools that are available to them that they think they're best for their use case. But it's just I
Interesting.
think it's been a good mix.
And and I'm sort of like raising my eyebrow under this cap, by the way, simply because I do realize, and a lot of people do not realize that jQuery is probably the most prominent library on the web right now. But I always wondered if it's the bottleneck at current. And again, there's reasons why it could, but it also makes me then wonder, how old are these sort of platforms, or at least how old are these sites that you've been tasked to improve, because it was there to address browser issues that existed, say, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think the problem lies in terms of tech debt, where they have a large code base which is deeply embedded with jQuery, and
Hmm.
it's not easy to pull the plug where they can easily just take jQuery out of. There might be like thousands of selectors that use jQuery in the code base.
Hmm.
So changing that or like pulling the plug is harder some most of the times than it is to go and address a specific issue. Let's say there's a specific jQuery handler that might be causing an issue on your site that you can replace with the browser native solution or do it in a better jQuery way. I think it's not that easy to just pull it out because of the tech debt.
Yeah,
So it still
and
lives there.
I absolutely agree. And it's one of those things where, do they realize that they could potentially pull it? And I'm not sure they do. And it makes me also wonder, because again, jQuery haven't been around for that long. When this org might onboard a new developer, is that developer even versed in jQuery? Does that developer even know what jQuery is? And it's just one of those things where it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. And again, jQuery having been extremely active many moons ago, and for it to be seen in a code base today must be like, oh, what's going on here? And again, if you're not familiar with jQuery, it's kind of like, what am I doing? And but that's it, very interesting. Again, I may be rambling here, but the idea that you're seeing a lot of jQuery and it being potentially a bit of a bottleneck is interesting because again, I think that if you've been in development, we'll say like 5 years, jQuery has to be foreign to you. You know,
Oh, yeah.
at least this is my take. Because there's so many more libraries that are available that to have this antiquated one being the one that's a bottleneck must be bizarre because you have no idea how it operates. Man, so moving forward, I know, I really wanted to spend a lot of time on that sort of like relationship with the orgs when you guys are working together and what you're seeing and whatnot. But you also mentioned that you're sort of like also working on the idea of sort of like building some tooling, something like that internally. Is this something that you could talk about, or is this sort of like top secret? Like I know Sean's in the chat, so I don't want him. Suddenly like slacking you like, hey, this is a no conversation.
I think the tooling I talked about is what we have at SpeedSense. Sensei, the Sensei platform, it's I think it's public, so it's available to anyone who is the customer. So they have
Okay.
access to the same data that we have access to. There's no internal magic dashboard that we use particularly.
Mhm,
So it's just we have a lot of data and it's surfaced on this dashboard that
mhm.
anyone can go in and look at, people who are clients.
No, I was just saying, like you'd mentioned that you're also working on some tooling and whatnot. So I was just kind of curious to see what that was and whether it was something that you were able to talk about.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that tooling, that dashboard of tooling is maintained, and so I have to go in and make sure that everything works properly and all the data is correct.
Cool. Now, as we sort of like taper this conversation and sort of like wrap up, what do you see? Is there something that's exciting you, say, over the next like 3 to 6 months? Is it something that you're working on yourself, or is it, some technologies, some APIs that are coming down the pipe that you think are going to make, sort of like performance auditing and working with orgs even more fun?
Yeah, I think I'll have to think about that more.
Okay, it could be a number of things. Like last week when I spoke with the folks over at Akamai, they'd mentioned that they're really excited for next year because of some core vitals landing in other browsers. LCP landing in Safari. Well, close to landing in Safari. It's currently in STP. And what else did he say? Oh, and the fact that Firefox is landing INP, but they already have LCP as well.
Oh yeah, I think one thing that I'm excited or like keeping an eye on is the data collection for core vitals when it comes to single page applications.
Mhm,
So there's been work done in the Web Vitals library,
mhm,
and I know there's I think a beta testing out already for that.
mhm.
So I think that's something very interesting to see and grow,
Nice.
because it is currently a problem to collect core vitals data correctly when it comes to single page applications.
Yeah, yeah, and that is something that some have groused about. So I totally get that much. Listen, Amrik, man, this has been a fantastic conversation. Like, again, it's the idea that I've always felt every conversation with clients and orgs that are looking for updates and improvements on, performance, user experience, core vitals, often come from different places, you know, and even the idea that a education platform was very much keen on improving their vitals for a number of reasons, and there've been a number of drivers for that to happen. But, you know, that interest in making sure that they be as top notch as possible brought them to even change the culture internally, to make sure that, every developer that touches this code base now, has to go through this checklist of like, "Hey, here's what we're looking for, and we're looking for nothing lesser." I know we talked about what you're looking for. I mean, what you're excited about in terms of like on a technical nature, but and for yourself, like any sort of like personal projects that you're working on that you want to talk about, and share with the audience.
Uh, Not currently. I want to start making more content when it comes to performance. So
Mhm.
that's something I'm looking forward to. Writing
Oh,
more
there you go.
detailed content and
Mhm.
performance.
Nice, nice, nice. You could maybe jump on a little content stream with your boss, Sean. You guys could both
Yeah.
be there in the video, be like, "Hey, hey, hey." If someone has been absolutely enamored with this conversation, they really loved your energy, they loved what you talked about, and they want to get in touch with you, what should they do?
I think LinkedIn is the best platform
Okay.
with Amrik Malhans.
Okay. Cool, 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 cool. I'll put that in the show notes for sure. And folks, and just like that, we're going to wrap it up. Uh, Amrik, man, I want to thank you for your time. It's been nice to hang out with someone in the same time zone, by the way. It's like it
Definitely.
seems, and it's great. Like I love my guests from across the world, but having the same time zone is absolutely fantastic. So, I'm not impeding on anyone's like dinner time, or they're not just waking up, you know, and things like that. So that's been great. Mike, did you want to say something to the audience before I step away? Or we
Oh
both,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I just want to thank you for listening. An
Oh,
hour.
oh, by all means, man. Actually, I spoke most of the time, so don't even worry. Um, I am going to keep you on stage. Don't go anywhere, but I will disconnect this live stream. Folks, thank you very much, and I will catch you soon.